So, you want to do some 3D printing, do you? Well, the first thing you have to do is to come up with a 3D design to print. Now, you can find lots of 3D designs that are already created, but this is about empowering you to do what you want with a 3D printer. So the first thing you need to do is to go to tinkercad.com and go ahead and click on the sign up. And then when you do that, it'll ask you a series of questions. You'll fill those kinds of things out. And once you're completed, that you'll then go back to Tinkercad and ask to sign in. And you'll put in your name, your email, or whatever username you had, your password. And then following that, you'll get to go into the Tinkercad environment. And so I have, this is me. I haven't uploaded some kind of image for me, so this is what it generated for me. And so there are all the designs, which I have quite a few, some that I pulled in from other people's designs, some that I've designed, etc. But this is the environment that we're going to be working with. And if you were to look further down here, you would see that there was an image that said Tinker this. And if I click on that, what it would do is open up the Tinkercad environment, and it would show me the object that had been tinkered. And this one had a major fail to it, because you'll notice here that the letters and the game piece here were not on the same horizontal level. So it didn't print very well. In fact, it didn't print at all. But that's for future conversations. So at this point in time, if you go back to this page, you can see that it says create new designs, and so you will click on create new design, and then you will be presented with this empty space upon which you can create your masterpiece. Now, one of the things that I do at first is that I go ahead and change the name of the file to something that's meaningful to me. Now, it's kind of fun every time you open something up that Tinkercad gives it a kind of funky name. So this is Fantastic Cup. But I want it to be something more meaningful to me, so I go to the design menu, go to properties, and when I do that, that's not what I wanted to show you. It gives me the name field, and I can come in there and put the name that I wish to have for it. And then I click Save Changes, and from there on, it will be named that. And one of the good things about Tinkercad is you don't have to worry about saving it, that every, I don't know, I think 10 seconds, maybe 15, it automatically saves. So once you get back into Tinkercad, you will see off to the right that there are a variety of objects, 3D objects, that you can start with, and this is how we're going to be proceeding, that you're going to end up selecting a minimum of 3 of these objects. And so they're the objects, and then I'm going to want you to select your two of your initials, and you're going to want to get them all out on the game board, so to speak. And you just select the item you want and then move your cursor out to the middle of this and click, and it just deposits it wherever you click. So I chose to do 4 objects, and I said you should do a minimum of 3, and then here are my initials. And so then if I select any of the objects, then what I see is that there are handles around. So these 4 handles on the bottom are to allow me to resize it in this horizontal plane. And then there is a handle up here that will allow me to stretch it in the vertical plane. And then this solid arrow here allows me to move something up and down. And then there are rotation handles that I'll show you the use of here shortly. So anyways, what I can do is, if I wanted to, for example, take this object and flip it on its head, so to speak, that I select it and then I go to the Adjust menu and I'm going to choose Mirror. And when I choose Mirror, then I can go ahead and mirror it in the forward and back, the right to left, or the up and down. And since this is a cone, trying to mirror it in either the forward, back, right to left, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference, but I could tell the difference if I actually choose the up and down. And so I did that, and so now that cone is on its head. Now if I tried to print this, it would result in what's called an air print, because it would have a very small contact area initially, and then it would try to build up from there, and it would try to be building upon material that isn't below it. So that's really not a good idea, but it's something I wanted to do because I want to be able to make a compound creation here. I want to be able to mix various pieces together. Now, after you've done something with that menu that allowed us to do the mirroring, that it does allow us to dismiss the mirror tool. So go ahead and do that. And so then what I ended up doing is I dragged the upside down cone on top of the right side up pyramid, because it intrigued me that that might be a good idea. But one of the things that you want to do, because if you just drag and you have this kind of view that is isometric, you know, kind of at an angle looking down on things, you can't really tell if things are lined up. So there's a tool in the upper left that allows us to change what our view is and to change our magnification. And so what I ended up doing is backing out a bit so I could see everything, and then I went ahead and used the tool, I believe it was this one that I used, so that I could get a downward view of things. And you'll find as you do this more and more, as you start to assemble things, you'll want to change from top view, side view, other side view, etc., to make sure things are lining up the way that you want. Now, if I had to try to rely on my eyesight to get these all lined up, that would be a major pain. So what I've done is I've selected these 4 objects that I want to get aligned, and so I just dragged around them, and I'm not ready for the letters yet, so those are off to the side, but I selected these, and then I went up to the menu where it says Adjust, and I chose Align. And what that now allows me to do is align a variety of different ways, and you're probably familiar with aligning from other sorts of programs, but what I want to do is align them in terms of their middles in both dimensions. So I chose this dimension first, and you can see that they are kind of aligned. Now, it doesn't really look like the upside down cone and the pyramid are aligned, but that's because I'm not exactly on top. I'm still kind of at an angle, so it looks a little bit offset. And then I went ahead and aligned by this middle. And then here I go and I can look at it, and from the side it looks like things are fairly well aligned, and from the side I could also align the bottoms, the middles, the tops. But what I want to do while I'm here is dismiss the align tool so I can then start doing other sorts of moving around. So here I am. I've got kind of a close-up look of things. Now, after you've done some alignment, if you want to actually start dealing with individual pieces of it, you're going to have to click off here somewhere so nothing's selected, and then come back and click on something so that it is selected. And that's what I did, and what I've selected is this half dome. And so one of the things that I can do when I have an object like this is if I point to a corner, sometimes I have to click on the corner, that I can get dimensions. But what I've done is clicked on this solid up arrow, and you can see it's selected, because what I want to be able to do is to drag this dome up on top of the upside down pyramid. And so by dragging that up, I had to drag it up 20 millimeters to get it to sit on top. And so I hope you think that looks kind of cool. I think it looks kind of cool. But the next thing I want to do is to take this ring, and I want to get it moved up. So I had, again, to click off so that nothing was selected, and then click back on just the ring, and then using the solid upward arrow, this one here, I dragged it up. And so you can see how that looks. Now, if I tried to print this, it would be a failure because the ring is not in contact with anything else. And so if I tried to print, it would get up to the bottom of this ring, and then it would start trying to print the bottom of the ring, but that wouldn't be in contact with anything else. And so that would be an issue. So what I've decided is that I'm going to go ahead and tilt the ring. And so when it's selected, there are arrows that allow me to rotate things in various directions. And so I've chosen this bendy arrow that will allow me to rotate along this vertical axis. And so I did so. And I made sure that the ring was in contact with the pyramid base down here and with the cone up here. Now there's still going to be some areas that are not in contact with anything, but they will be built on a base. So it's my hope, and I haven't printed this yet, but it's my hope that this will turn out fine. I go ahead and I take a look at it from the top, from the side, from another side, from another side. I take a close-up look, because what I'm trying to do is to make sure that things look like they're solid. And so I, at this point, think that I'm ready to start doing things with the initials, because I'd like to embed initials on this. And so what I am first doing is selecting my last initial, and I'm going to rotate it so you can see that this is highlighted, that in the horizontal plane. And so what I've done is turned it around, because what I want to end up doing is embedding it so that the W is face up. And so I rotated it this way. Now I'm going to rotate it vertically, and so you see that the vertical rotation arrow is selected. But since the pyramid is at an angle, I don't rotate it into the fully upright position. I rotate it in an angled position. Now for the first initial, that what I've chosen to do is I'm going to put this on the very top of the game piece. So I've selected the upward solid arrow, and then I have levitated it. And now what I am going to do is to start moving it. And so I've moved it so that it appears to be over the center, but to make sure, because again, that it, looks can be deceiving when you're looking at an angle, that I went ahead and selected, and I should probably jump back real quick, and back here, before I started doing anything of trying to combine the game piece and the initials, I selected all of the game piece, and then I went to the menu that says adjust, and I went to the menu that said group, and I clicked on group, and it made this all a single piece now. So sorry I didn't say that earlier. Now I have dragged my first initial in there. Now I've chosen to align it, and I've aligned it in the left-right direction, and now I'm going to try to position it where I think I want it, and so I move it around until I get to the point where I think it is at about the right depth. And at that point in time, with the initial still selected, that rather than having it this color, I'm going to turn it into a hole. And what that will do is, rather than it being an extruded piece, it's going to be, anti-extruded? And so I chose hole, and now that's cut into here. And so I look around a bit. I select the initial in the game piece, and then I go to the menu and choose group. And what that ends up doing is turning it from a grayed out D to, is that embossed? I don't know what you would call that, but a cutout D. Now I start to do the same thing with the W, that what I want to do is make sure I get it lined up properly. And so I select both of them. I go to adjust, align, and then what I am then able to do is to select the dimensions that I want to align. So of course I want it to be aligned in the middle, and so I do that. And then what I'm able to do is, and then I made the choice to try to align it at the front edge, but that didn't turn out real well because it kind of got buried in here. And so what I had to then do is, by changing angles and moving things around, I wanted to get at least part of the W flush with the pyramid base portion. And so it took me a bit just trying various kinds of maneuverings until I got to that point where I now don't want it as the letter W in a color. I want to turn it into a hole. And so that's what I do. And you can see now that it's a cutout rather than a gray W on there. And like before, what I then need to be able to do is select everything and then group it. And once it's grouped, you no longer see the grayed out W, you see that it is cut out. And so, again, generally at this point in time, I maneuver around looking at it from various angles, try to make sure that it looks good. Now you'll see here this is 30 millimeters tall. And my idea was to make this a total of 50 millimeters tall. So I've selected it, and again, if I were to grab this solid upward arrow and drag it, it would raise it off of the platform, which is not what I want to do. I want to grow it in the vertical direction. And so there is a little dot right there, and what I've done is drag that up so that it's 50 millimeters tall. And then I, again, take one last longing look at it from various kinds of directions and make sure that it looks good. When I'm finished with that, I think I'm ready to actually get it ready to print. So I go to the design menu and I choose download for 3D printing. And when I select that choice, then it asks me what type of file I want to save it as. And for the time being, using the printers that we have, we want to choose an STL, that stands for stereolithography. But when I choose that, then it goes ahead and it downloads it, usually in most computers, into the download folder, and then I should be ready to turn around and make a 3D print of that by pulling it into another piece of software and doing the final preparation. So now that you've seen how to create your own 3D piece without copying me, please go back and choose at least 3 shapes, your initials, assemble them. Feel free to come back and look at whatever part of this video that you need to, and get yourself to the point where you have an STL file that has your game piece with your combined pieces and your embossed letters, and we'll show you where to go from there. All right? See you on the other side.